Our first panel, Matt Kaskavitch. He's going to talk about social media and the use of social media during disruptions and disasters. And I'm really interested in what Matt has to say because I do that every day when there's a disaster. Social media is a huge part of my job. Brian Servano, he's with the Syncness. Strategic view, what, how, and why of crisis communication. What message, when, and why. And I'm interested how he addresses that because we in media get accused of being sensational all the time, all right? And in many cases, we are, okay? I'm not going to lie to you. I saw the network news this morning talking about the cold air coming next week. They're talking polar vortex and all this other kind of crap, and it's driving me nuts, okay? Because when you push that envelope and you go past, sensationalize, people tune you out and they're no longer listening. So that's a very big challenge. And Trevor Mickelson with Agility Recovery, having the right message and the use of a website to relay that. We're talking technology, communication, and marketing. And from a marketing standpoint, over here in Manitou Springs, trying to get people to come back to your business and how to market that to your customer is a huge challenge. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to these guys. Matt's going to talk first right here, and we'll save plenty of time for questions at the end, but I'm going to chime in throughout these guys' talk and try to challenge them the best that I can, and I'm looking forward to it, guys. Let's go ahead and get started.
All right. Thank you very much, Brian. And where's that clicker at for the slides? Awesome. Thank you. The first thing I kind of want to talk about is why people turn to social media in a disaster. And I think that Colorado Springs is an interesting kind of situation to study. And I said, just to give you some background about why I'm standing in front of you today, I said I worked at Penrose St. Francis Health Services as a social media coordinator for both of the fires, both for the Black Forest Fire and the Waldo Canyon Fire. And I said my job was to come at it purely from a social media perspective as well as from a PR and marketing perspective. One of the things that we learned is that Colorado Springs is a very, very resilient community. I mean, outstandingly resilient. And I said, we'll have some great stories to share toward the end of my time here. But why do people go to social media? One of the things about why they do is that they want authentic, unfiltered communication, something they're not going to find elsewhere. And this kind of goes back to Brian's point about they actually have to see it, right? They have to see it to believe it. They can hear stories, they can hear reports, and they hear stuff on the media, but they don't actually take that in. In fact, research shows that people actually have to hear something, have 7 different sources, see 7 different touch points before they actually take action in a disaster. I mean, that's incredible. What social media provides is that unique form of communication where people can say, here's what I'm seeing in front of my house, here is the picture. And if you can remember back to the fires, you saw these just horrific pictures on social media. And people go, wow, and they get retweeted, right? And that helped really press home what was exactly happening in the community and how serious it really was. I can recall coming back down I-25 from Denver to Colorado Springs the day the Waldo Canyon fire started. And I said, I'm coming at this from a disaster perspective in terms of wildfire, but again, as we mentioned throughout the day here, it could be really anything. But I'm going to mostly talk about it through the lens of the wildfire situation in the Springs. And I remember seeing that orange glow across the city and getting a page across my pager from the hospital saying citywide emergency, and everybody had to come into the hospital. And I said at that point, I knew something was occurring. I looked on social media and I can see people's pictures of Woodman Road and seeing how backed up it was with cars trying to escape as the flames come down the side of the mountain here. I'll never forget that scene, and I'll never forget the photos that I saw. And I said, that's where I turned to immediately when I got that page I went right to Twitter. I wanted to see what the real-time communication aspect was. Another reason why people go there is it's convenient. Because really now social media is actually really easy for most people in the community because, again, it's on your phone. And that's increased with the prevalence of smartphones and smart devices. It's in your pocket. You have access to live streaming news from KKTV on your phone. You have access to Facebook, Twitter, and it's all in your pocket. So that's another reason why people turn to social media for things like this. Another reason why is that people actually go there for a sense of community. And I think that's what you saw in Colorado Springs after the disasters. People go to social media to connect with other people in the community because as things are going into chaos, things are happening all around you, you want that sense of community. You want to feel together. You want to feel like you're all together facing this disaster head on. And we saw that really a lot with both fires, especially the Waldo Canyon fire that happened in the Springs. I mean, it was a huge thing to see people come together, offering help. Here's what I can do for you. I have a business that does this. Anybody need help, please tweet me, leave me a Facebook message, and I'll come help you. I mean, that's a way that connects people. And I said a lot of times people get lost in the technology of social media. Hootsuite this, Facebook this, page, post, all the gobbledygook social media stuff. I said that's so hard for some people to wrap their heads around. What I always try to bring it down to is you have to remember, it's not about the technology. It's not. It's my job to geek out on that stuff and really research it and learn it and know it backwards and forwards and do everything I do in my daily job. That's my job to do that. However, you have to remember, it's just about relationships. It's about people. That's what it comes down to. I mean, I could come up here and talk about, you need to have this software, and if you put it like this, it's going to help you because you're doing it this way. It's not about that. It's about connecting people and making relationships. And that's what really, truly becomes important in a disaster, are the relationships. I mean, the stories you can tell, the help you can provide, because again, everyone is facing the same kind of problem. The same disaster is staring everyone in the face, and social media is what bonds everyone together around that central issue, and that's why it's so important. I remember talking to somebody that came to a debrief after the Waldo Canyon fire. We had a lot of people that were very active on social media come together, and I said, what did you guys experience? What did you guys have happen when you were using social media during the fire? We had like a 3-hour discussion in town at a local brewery, and this woman came and she goes, I really wasn't involved. I'm not like a communications professional. I'm not a social media person, but I saw your event on Twitter. I decided I really wanted to come and talk to you guys. There was about 15 or 20 of us, and she goes, my husband's a firefighter. He was fighting the Waldo Canyon fire as it happened. I was at home with the children by myself. I wanted to let you know that the stuff that you guys were doing was so critically important, sharing information on Twitter, and that is the primary platform that people use to really share different information in a disaster. That was the only thing that worked for me. Because one of the things that happened during the Waldo Canyon fire was cell phone service was really intermittent, unreliable, because everybody was calling. Everybody was trying to get messages in and out. So she said, I couldn't call, I couldn't text. The one thing, although very slow, that worked for me to get messages in and out was Twitter. And that's the only way I can get information based on my situation. What I was doing that day was through what you guys were sharing. And thank you so much for doing that. And she shared this story, and I said everybody thought it was fantastic because, again, it really showed the impact of what social media can do to provide timely information that's up to date. Now, that can be a little scary because social media, while it's real-time, unfiltered to the second, it also can be unreliable. There are people that sit around and get enjoyment out of just trying to ramp up fear, ramp up misinformation on social media. So I said you have to take it with a grain of salt to a point. Is the person tweeting this, do they actually have credibility? Are they someone that actually knows other people in the community? Is it a business? Who is this person? What kind of history do they have? Do they have only 5 followers and they just created their account yesterday? That's a little suspicious. So I said all these things play into credibility in terms of disaster communications. And we took a lot of takeaways from both of the Black Forest fire and the Waldo Canyon fire. And I want to kind of share some stories now about what Penrose St. Francis did during this time and explain why we did these things and why they were important. So let me advance my slides here for you. All right, so adding value to the conversation. We at the hospital thought, what can we provide given the current situation that is of value? Social media, you always want to provide value to your audience. So I said, we can definitely provide medical experts that can talk about what are the dangers of, I said, the air quality. What does that mean for people with bronchitis, with asthma? I mean, that's where we really kind of can fill in that gap, help people out on the health front. We weren't directly involved in the crisis because, again, it wasn't probably going to cross over I-25, and the Black Forest fire probably wasn't going to come all the way down to St. Francis Medical Center on the northeast side of town. But again, we're not directly involved in the crisis, but how can we add value and help people out in the community? So we started doing this. We relayed information we knew was credible, that was coming from government sources, as well as giving our own experts to talk about the health aspects of what was occurring. That's how we added value during this time. As it went along, here's another example of us sharing, I said, some information in terms of the maps. One thing that social media and digital media in general is really great at, we saw with both fires, is providing real-time updated maps. Where are the evacuation areas? Where can you go? Here's a staging area with resources. Go find some resources for you if you're displaced from your home. So again, sharing this information. This is somebody, it may be hard for you to read in the back, that retweeted a tweet that we sent out about what the current evacuation area was that day. But things are going to quickly change. Remember, as the fire came down the side of the mountain, there is a nursing home up there by the Air Force Academy, St. Francis, in which all those patients were evacuated to Penrose Main Hospital, right over here across the road. So I said, all of a sudden, we had an influx of almost 100 people that we weren't expecting, that we had to find a room for, get fed. Some people needed certain machines, certain medications, and all of a sudden we were overwhelmed and we became a direct player in the crisis. So I said, we could have obviously just provided a phone number, or we could have just had our calls routed to our incident command center in the hospital in terms of people looking for loved ones. We told the media ahead of time, if you're looking for any information, look on Twitter. Now, again, this only works because we've actually had a strong Twitter presence and social media presence in general at Penrose for years before this. You cannot come in during a crisis and use social media effectively right from day one. You have to have a presence and that trust built up in your community ahead of time. And that's what we said. We tweeted to every single news outlet and said, if you're looking for the latest, go right to our Twitter account. This is the latest and greatest. If you call us, we're not going to have any more than what you can see right here. So I said, as they came, we said, we're going to provide real-time information. And then once they finally actually did end up coming to us, we said, here is a number to call. So again, when the media is on the air live talking, as I'm sure Brian is well aware of, and you're looking for more information, the latest latest updates, this is where you're going to find it. So here's a number to call. So I said, as we're running around, we're stretched for resources in the communications department. We're literally moving patients from one place to another. So I said, everything we did was not done by telephone. It was done through my phone in my pocket. And that's how we really, got information out while we were directly involved. So I said, we also posted the same information on Facebook. Again, we have a great community built on Facebook at Penrose St. Francis. And I said, it still carries on today. They have a great Facebook page. If you don't follow it, you should. So again, we also put that information out on Facebook. It's important you'll notice that every time we put out information on social media, we're using the main primary hashtag or way to organize conversation, which was, in this case, Waldo Canyon Fire. That went on every single post because that's the one place people are looking for information about what's going on with the fire. So I said we put that on Facebook, and as things continue to evolve with the crisis, here's an example of as things are kind of winding down. They've peaked, things are starting to come back down again to normalcy a little bit. We posted this photo of firefighters walking a line, fighting the fire, and it was just a simple thing that these are the real heroes that are really saving our community. And we put this out on social media, and you can see, I said this was the actual reach and how many likes it got, shares, and comments. Now, this was a strategic way to go about it. We did this on purpose. It's a great photo. It's very engaging. But I said we did this because it gets more visibility for us as Penrose St. Francis, but also it's really something that the community can rally around. We know that. That's why we put it out there, thinking about the psychology of what kind of content we post. But that's why we did it, and I said it reached, over 250,000 people with this photo. Here's another example of a photo of chapstick, not usually very engaging when it comes to a photo, but I said 700 likes, 22 shares, and it reached 21,000 people and a ton of comments also. So, and we were saying we're delivering these to firefighters in the front lines, letting people know how we're evolving in the crisis, what we're doing. And I said people respond to that because, again, everything everybody in the city had top of mind was the disaster. It was the crisis. Any content around that, it's going to be likely to get a like, comment, or share because that's what everyone's talking about, everyone's thinking about. And that's what's most successful in social media is the stuff that's most relevant and most timely to your audience. And as we look down to really wrapping up the crisis, we did a thank you campaign to the firefighters. Where we had this huge banner, and we said, if you leave us likes and comments, especially the comment section on this one, we will actually take your comments, transcribe them onto the banner, and we'll deliver it to the fire departments for you. So if you want to leave a personal message to them, we will write it for you and deliver it to the fire department by hand as a way, again, to provide another service to the community. And we did that, and it got a great response. Firefighters loved it. And I said this whole banner was chock full of signatures and notes and just amazing stories of thanks and what the firefighters did for the community during the Waldo Canyon fire. And one of the things that really came out of that was, as it really began to resolve, on a comment on that post, the thank you post that I just showed you from Facebook, we had a nurse from a competing hospital leave a comment saying, do you have a children's bear that you get when you're in the hospital and you're a child and you get kind of this teddy bear to hold on to in your bed? And again, this goes back to the importance of monitoring and responding to people during a crisis that are in your community. We said, let us check. Can you send us a photo? I spent days conversing with this person, and I said, can you just get me a photo of what this bear looked like? What happened was this family went on vacation that lived in Mountain Shadows, and their house burned down while they were on vacation on the East Coast. The one thing that this little girl wanted to take with her on vacation was her favorite bear. Her parents were trying to kind of detach her from that and said, why don't we leave it at home this time? Just leave it at home, it'll be fine. And then she came back home, and she no longer had her bear anymore. And you can imagine that was a really big deal for her. So I said, we actually spent 2 days turning over the hospital looking for this particular kind of bear, the exact bear. Somebody had it sitting on their desk. Just one bear left. We go through a lot of vendors and a lot of stuff changes. One person had that bear laying on their desk. So I said, what we did turned it into a social media campaign. I know it's hard to see on this slide. It was hashtag Lily's Bear. It was from July 5th of 2012. And we actually had the bear take over the Penrose St. Francis social media accounts and tweet and do posts as the bear with not using capitalization, not exactly using correct grammar. So it was like this little bear is actually talking from the hospital's accounts. And it was said they were driving across the country to come back home. And Lily, this little girl, she was following all these posts as she was driving across the country to reunite with her bear. And I said it got a lot of awareness for us. It did a lot of great things for the visibility of Penrose, but also I think the reason we really did it was, of course, we want to reunite Lily with her bear. That's really important to us because, I mean, who doesn't want to do that for somebody that lost something that's so dear to them? But also, I said what this really did was put a cap, I think, for a lot of people in this community. It was covered by a lot of the media of that feel-good story after the fact, that these are those good stories that come out of bad things when they happen. So I said, as she came back home, this reached, in total, the whole campaign, over 2 million people. It became a national news story. It was one of those things that the media really likes to pick up on, those feel-good things out of a bad disaster. And I said, that's the amount of reach we got on social media from this. Here's an example of, the bear actually ended up being called Walda. We wanted to name him Waldo, but it was actually a female bear. We didn't know that. So she changed it to Walda for us. And this is Walda reading the Gazette, I said in the days after the fire. And again, so you can see the tweet. I know it's a little hard to read up there. This is a picture of Lily that she sent me months afterwards, and I still have this hanging up in my desk at work. And people ask me, like, what's my greatest achievement in social media and stuff that I do? And, you know, we grow our Facebook page by this much %, and Twitter, we do all these things. And I always point to this. I said, this is the best thing I've ever done. Because this is real. This is human. I said, I can go on about the tech stuff and the strategy and all that stuff, but really what it all boils down to is relationships. And I said, this is what we were able to do. The last thing we did for Lily that I want to share with you is we took all those photos that we spent the whole week while they were on vacation, and I made it into a hardcover book for her. And then when she came back to reunite with her bear, and it was a big event, all the media was there, and it was them, the CEO of the hospital, handing over the bear. I said, we also gave them this gift of this book. And she still carries this book around to this day. She took it in and talked about it during her school. And I said, this is something that's really dear to her. And I'm sure she'll probably never, ever let that bear out of her sight ever again after what happened. But I got a letter from her parents, and I said they still contact me to this day. And I said it's a great thing that we were able to do at Penrose St. Francis for that family. And I said they still feel close, and they still stop into our office, even though I'm no longer there anymore. But I said, this is something that we were able to do. Again, this shows the power of social media. It's not about the tech. It's about the people. It's about relationships. And I said, it's important for you guys to use this. So when you look at what should you take away from this? In a disaster, the first thing you have to do is you should acknowledge it immediately, whatever it is. Just make sure people are aware that you're aware. Say something about it. Acknowledge what's going on. After that, figure out what is your goal? What is your strategy? What are you trying to convey to your audience? I said, do you have resources that can help out? Let people know that. Understand that if you do, you could be inundated with stuff. Understand that scope of what could happen. The other stuff to consider also is in social media, make sure you find the official hashtag. Any disaster, any kind of major crisis is going to have a hashtag, that pound symbol with words. It's going to be an official designator. Anything you post on any social network that accepts hashtags should have that attached to it. Otherwise, the people that are involved in that crisis are probably not going to see it. Only your community that follows you directly are going to see that. So make sure you do that. And again, tell your story. Other stuff that I didn't post, while both fires were going on, we would take photos from inside our incident command center at Penrose, Maine, letting people know that we were paying attention. We were aware. We were making plans. If you have a family member in the hospital right now, we are thinking what would happen if the worst happens. We have backup plans. We're aware, we're on top of it, we're reassuring our community that we know what's going on. And that goes back to acknowledging it as soon as possible. And again, I come at it through a disaster lens in terms of the wildfires to my part of the presentation this morning. But again, this can really adhere to anything. And there's different strategy involved. It was like a breach of security, a more kind of public relations nightmare. There's different things that I could talk about that I don't have time to this morning. But again, think about it this. Be a part of the community. During a crisis, people are looking for a sense of community. It brings people together. And if there's one thing that social media does really well, is it brings people together. And when a disaster hits, people go into overdrive for looking for information and looking for people in the community that can help, that want to come together, that want to organize, self-mobilize. Social media can help you do that. Be in social media beforehand. Don't try to come in during the crisis, because again, you're not going to have the credibility and trust. Make sure you're there before. And I said, once it hits, be active. Have your phone on you. Have a way to charge your phone without having electricity. That's a big thing. I would carry a Go Pack at me at all times, and I have a little battery pack that I can charge my phone 5 or 6 times over and over on one charge out of this big juice pack. So yeah, get one of those. Those are important. But again, just be prepared and get in the conversation and add value. Talk. It's human to human. It's not account to account. It's real people behind those accounts. And that's, I think, the most thing I can stress to you is it's not about the technology, it's human. So be in there, be involved, and shift it from a marketing perspective when you use it in everyday business to being a part of the community and how can you help and how can you provide value. And that's it for me. I think Brian is up next.
I got to...
Oh.
Good. Just quickly, how many of you were on Facebook in here? Just show of hands. Okay. How many are on Twitter? Ugh. A lot of hands went down there, which is okay. And I'm trying my best through the TV station as well as my personal business to get more people on Twitter. There is no single better source for information when you need it now. Agreed?
Absolutely.
Matt?
Absolutely. I mean, when you need it now, that unfiltered information, Twitter, you can't beat it.
Yes. Why? Who isn't on Twitter today? Just raise your hand. Why are you not on Twitter?
Don't really have a need, I guess.
Don't have a need? Okay. Who doesn't understand how it works? And feel free to raise your hand. Exactly. Is it intimidating to you?
Yes, that stuff is intimidating.
It's intimidating, okay? I get that all the time. And in many cases, Twitter is easier than Facebook because Twitter is more utilitarian. You can go and get it as you want versus Facebook. Does Facebook have more of that personal feel to you where you're sharing family pictures and you're doing that type of thing? But from an information standpoint, the way Facebook is set up right now, you will see things pop into your feed that may be 6 or 7 days old. Twitter doesn't do that, okay? So if you are, and I tell my clients this all the time, I tell people, I said, if you are intimidated by Twitter or you don't really understand how, send me an email, I'll set you up. Because if from a business standpoint, which obviously all of you are here for, it's such an important communication tool nowadays. Yes?
And LinkedIn, I live on LinkedIn because of the business side of it. And Twitter integrates very well with LinkedIn. So it should be a natural connection into what you're doing. And everybody here at business, if you're business-minded, LinkedIn's a good place to start. And bringing Twitter in should be really easy.
Absolutely. And if you don't understand the terminology, hashtags or how to use it, you can Google anything nowadays. How to use Twitter. And you're going to get I mean, am I wrong, Matt? I mean, it's
I have a good anecdote for you.
Yeah.
Facebook is for people that you know. Twitter is for people that you wished you knew. That's the difference. Facebook is your personal connections, right? Your family, your friends that are close to you. Twitter is for people that have the same interests as you, or you want to target certain groups, certain businesses, certain kinds of different professionals. So I said, you can make your Twitter list of followers and people you follow, whoever you want, which is great. So I said, Facebook is more personal. Twitter is for people, I said, that you really want to know, that you want to know more about, that you want to hear what they have to say. So another way to say it is Facebook is people you went to high school with, Twitter is people you wish you went to high school with. That's the difference between the two.
Totally. And during those fires, what was the number one most important piece of information that people were seeking? Anybody?
Evac zones.
Evacuation zones. Maps, right? Absolutely. This is, and I've talked to the city and I've talked to the county about this type of thing, and we beat this to death every time there's a disaster. Why are you holding this information hostage on an easel, drawing like this with the technology we have now with Google Maps and everything else? Why are you doing that? That is completely nuts to do something like that. Yet they continue to do it. So the great thing about especially Twitter, depending on who you follow, the Forest Service puts out those maps that are drawn out like that on Twitter. You don't have to wait for that 4 o'clock press conference. Okay, so when I'm in my weather office going blind from drawing those, the evacuation zones and whatnot and trying to convey people, that's the number one place I go. I grab that map off Twitter, I'm drawing it up, or I'm taking a screenshot of it so I can put it immediately on TV, because those evac zones, especially with a dynamic situation, are always changing. So as a business owner, if you're looking at that, I mean, just have that in the back of your mind, that old, clunky, traditional way of delivering that information, which the city and the county unfortunately continue to think needs to be done, is really frustrating. It's frustrating to somebody not in the evac zone. Imagine what it's like to somebody who's, did my business burn down? Do I need to tell my employees to get out? Can we go back? You know what I'm saying? That type of thing, so.
Yeah, and just to, again, I want to reiterate, I said this is a great example of how fast Twitter can be, is there was an earthquake in which people actually read the tweets on Twitter that an earthquake had just happened, and people said, I just felt my whole house shake down the eastern seaboard, down in the Carolinas. And I said they actually read it, knew about it on Twitter before they even felt it 2 states away. So they actually had about an 8 or 9 second delay, a 10-second delay, and then they felt it. But they already knew it was coming. I mean, now that's for a rare instance of people that actually just happen to be looking at Twitter at that time. But I mean, that's how fast and unfiltered it is. It's real time to the second. And I said in a disaster, I mean, people want that timely information. It cannot come quick enough. I'm sure you all can remember that people want to know right away. As soon as they possibly can, they want that information. And I said, Twitter is a scary place, but sometimes it can be misinformation or wrong. But again, more times than not, I said, you can kind of decipher what's good and what's bad. And I said, Twitter, if you're not on it, it's a great thing to build relationships from a business perspective and marketing. But I said, in a disaster or crisis, becomes invaluable.
You had a question, ma'am?
One sponsor that would be a potential for this business seminar is Verizon. I was up US 24 Waldo Canyon burning out of my business, out of my home. There's a mountaintop between the cell tower and me, and that's in many parts of this state of Colorado, where yes, you may get something through eventually, but it's going to be really slow.
How to figure out getting.
Somebody else is building cell towers. So
Sure.
more communication with them.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. That's good. And they get that all the time. I've got Verizon on my phone. I get 1 bar in my house, and yeah, they're trying to improve that all the time. Yeah.
Do they have those instant towers that you just can throw down and set up in a couple of hours? You know that they did it for police stations and stuff like that. Then you get instant service. Right?
Yeah, I know that. I said, I'm not familiar if they did it during the fires. I'm sure they did, because I said they'll do them for big events, Super Bowl, stuff like that. So anytime a disaster happens, these companies are aware of the stuff that's going on in the communities, and I said they will deploy those mobile cell towers and put them up so that there's more bandwidth for people to get more information. And I said Twitter provides information that is so small and so tiny. I said you can't surf the web really effectively as the pipes are clogged, bad analogy, but everyone's trying to get online at the same time. But Twitter, if you can just get that hashtag to refresh just one time and just wait 2 minutes for that refresh to happen, you're going to get a myriad of tweets of what's going on currently. And that's what the woman that came to our debrief really expressed about how invaluable that information was. And that's the only thing that worked for her from her phone. She couldn't surf the web. She couldn't make a call. She couldn't do texting. She is able to get her Twitter to update once in a while, and that's how she got her information. And she explained just how critical that was to keep her and her family safe.
Yes, ma'am.
I have AT&T, and we did not have good service at our house, so even where we were evacuated to for a year. So I called up the customer service, and I got them to give me a free microcell, because I paid for service. And since we got that, we're back in our house, we get excellent cell phone service now.
Really? Okay. Good.
I mean,
Good
we
tip.
had one bar at the house before, and I said, look, these things cost $200. I said, I paid for service, I have no service, and they gave me a free one.
Awesome.
That's, you know,
You know what I'll be doing this afternoon?
So the critical piece of that is you have to have Wi-Fi.
yes, you do.
So you,
Well, yeah, I also meant I had cell phone service.
completely agree.
Yeah,
But remember, if you don't have the internet, you don't
Right.
have cell phone service.
right.
So just the mini cells are good if you have the internet. Otherwise, you're back to where you were before.
Sure. Don't be intimidated by the technology, yeah.
Lose anything like that, you don't have.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Real quick, any copyright issues with retweeting, especially Mac graphics? Pretty much, everybody who builds Mac graphics takes a fair amount of work, so they're copyrighted. So are there any issues with stuff like that?
In a crisis, I mean, from what I've been experiencing, I'm pretty sure Matt would say the same thing. Most people that are sending out those graphics, as long as you give credit to where that came from and reference, plus that gives your tweet credibility. If you're retweeting that and you're retweeting from a credible service, people are more inclined to share your information than something else going through. Pictures at the station, we basically have to go through a little bit more of a process before we will display those pictures on the air because, I mean, you have trolls. I mean, sorry for the term, but that's what they are. And they will bait you with the picture on Facebook. And then, just to me, if you share that on our page, that's kind of unwritten permission that we can kind of share it with our viewers. You're sharing it with 168,000 people on our Facebook page. But then they'll say, no, I'm going to sue you because you put that on TV. I mean, I know it's warped, but I mean, it is what it is. But from that standpoint, from a maps and especially emergency managers getting that information out, they actually want you to share that information to get it out as fast as possible. Yeah. Yes.
Isn't it true that the maps that come from any place in our government, whether it's from the military or from government entities, that we actually pay for those and we don't have to get permission for those?
That we don't get permission for those?
Have to get-
Yes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And
Depending on the
exactly. Yeah, and most people are looking for that official source too because they want to use something reliable if they're making a decision based upon that. And it goes back to what Matt was saying. Most people will go through 7 different sources. Well, wouldn't you like to just go through one so you don't have to sit there and wait to verify something like that and make that decision as soon as possible?